Diversity, equity, inclusion. These three words are transforming our country. But are they transforming the accounting profession? This is the IssuesWatch podcast. Hi, I'm Don Meyer, Chief Marketing Officer at the New Jersey Society of CPAs, and welcome to the IssuesWatch podcast. Diversity, equity, and inclusion have become increasingly important as demographic and social shifts transform our country. The accounting profession isn't immune to these shifts, yet the good faith efforts those in the profession commonly make haven't yet managed to really move the needle. Here with me to discuss DE&I in the accounting profession and their own research into this issue are two of our colleagues from the Illinois CPA Society. First, their president and CEO, Todd Shapiro. Welcome, Todd.
We're happy to participate.
And their senior director of the CPA Endowment Fund and Planning and Governance, Carrie Natali. Welcome, Carrie.
Thanks for having me, Don.
And I should say welcome back to both of you because you guys did a podcast with us about a year ago on the pipeline. So we appreciate you giving us your time. So Carrie, let's start with you. In November, the Illinois CPA Society released a CPA diversity report uncovering the barriers to success. Please tell us what was behind your research and how it was conducted.
Sure, thanks for asking. In Illinois, we've had a program running for the last 10 years called our Mary T. Washington Wiley Internship Preparation Program. As that hit our 10-year mark, we started doing some research with the alumni of the program, and the program participants are mainly Black and Hispanic and other racial minority backgrounds. And so those students participate in a 3-day program and then get interviewed and placed into internships. And so most of our program participants have been very successful preparing for those internships, getting internships. But we started to hear in the last maybe 4 or 5 years that while there's been some progress in terms of the placement and the number of people entering into the profession through our program, some of our scholars were coming back to us and talking about some challenges they were experiencing when they got into the workforce. And so the purpose of our research was really to understand what our alumni were experiencing when they got into the work environment so that we at the Illinois CPA Society could better help foster their success if they were experiencing some barriers. And so we were looking at, doing some research around how to develop new programs and resources for those specifically around barriers. And so while, as our report will tell you, many of them have been very successful, we focused our research mainly on challenges and barriers so that we could better understand from their perspective. So we did conducted some confidential surveys and interviews of this population, and focused on what was happening, whether they were successful or not, what kind of barriers they experienced. We intentionally only contacted our program participants because we felt we had a pretty close, trusting relationship with them over the years, and they come back to us, and we've been in contact with them over the years. And it was our hope to, understand how we can continue to support them beyond that 3-day program. And so a bit about our research, we had 159 people from our 260 pool of alumni respond. Most of them, I would say about 70%, started in public accounting, and all of the respondents had at least 1 year of experience. So that's a bit behind the research.
I think one of the most impressive things about the research was the response rate. Because we know from personal experience that younger people don't necessarily respond to surveys. So I found that really impressive, and I think that really adds some credence to a lot of what you're able to find in the research, the fact that so many of your scholarship recipients responded to the survey. So Todd, the report outlined 3 themes that could be contributing to the persistent disparity in minority representation and advancement in the accounting profession. Could you discuss those takeaways?
Yeah, the 3 themes that we heard in general terms. One was not feeling like part of the organization, and that was a theme that was not surprising to us. Actually, we kind of expected that. The one thing I would add, by the way, to what Carrie said about why we did the study and the Mary T. scholars is we had also been hearing some feedback from employers in a couple of cases of challenges they were having with our Mary T. scholars once they got in the workplace. So we were from two different means, both the employer having some issues as well as some of the Mary T. scholars having some challenges when they got in the workplace. So that really got us piqued our interest. So the first general theme of not feeling part of an organization isn't new to what we hear in the profession. I'm the only person of diverse background in the company, or in my department or in my area. I don't feel included. It's not a very inclusive environment. Those were again, nothing there really was a surprise to us. If you move to the next theme, which was not really feeling prepared for the position. That kind of piqued our attention. Also, that piqued our attention a lot because the question gets into when you get into the issue of it's not a diverse environment, and you can have these conversations we all do. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? If no one stays in a diverse environment, and if you don't have if you don't have a diverse environment, no one stays. There's a lot we've talked about relative to an inclusive environment over the years. So again, a lot's being done, but there's a lot of conversation about it. But the challenge then really when we heard people didn't feel that they were prepared adequately, that one sort of caught our eye to a significant degree and required us to do some further digging below that. And that gets into anywhere from my life experiences, the situation I'm put in versus my peer group when I'm at the firm. Situation I'm put in, my life experiences. I may be a first generation college person who is in the workplace versus, someone who has been part of a professional family of professionals for decades or generations. It got a little bit into the education of the individual. Some didn't feel adequately prepared in their education. We could all say that we all learn a lot in the workplace, but really we dug a lot deeper into, and we're trying to understand in a much more depth where people are recruiting out of, where people are recruiting the average, for lack of a better word, the average white student who works in a larger firm versus a diverse individual. And the reality is we look in different areas and different places for people are diverse individuals. So there may be some underlying challenges when somebody says, I didn't feel adequately prepared educationally. And then the question is, did I get the right feedback that I got? Am I getting the feedback I need to get to be successful? That was, I think, I don't care what you'd say, but that was a little bit of an aha moment for us too. One that I think is relatively resolvable. But not getting the right feedback and then being let go is the reality is a number of individuals. And by the way, some of our individuals are very successful. Some of the Mary T. Scholarship have been very, very successful, but there's challenges, and the challenge it's in a significant enough number that it warranted our attention. So not getting that feedback was a little bit of an aha moment, like why aren't people getting good feedback? And then they're either leaving voluntarily or they're being, as we say in the report, being pushed out of the organization. So those are, Carrie, you want to add anything to the three general?
Yeah, no, just what you were saying about inadequate feedback and development. We heard, that theme was really around very generic or minimal job training. Like, so if you were to give me feedback before it was too late that I needed to improve on something, I would have been open to that and would have wanted to learn if I had that opportunity. But it was kind of like the theme that we heard in this section was mainly around, it was too late. Like I wasn't given the feedback until it was like, it's time to go. And so they were believing that if they would just had an opportunity to, make some changes, they would have been open to that.
And I think there's a compounding effect of all of these different themes. It's one thing not to get good feedback, but if you also don't feel like you're a part of the organization and you didn't feel adequately prepared to work there, then all those things are going to make for a miserable work experience. So, Carrie, I wanted to talk about that that one barrier that Todd mentioned, the environment not being inclusive. One of the things that struck me was some of the most heartbreaking quotes from the participants were around this issue of inclusivity. What did your research indicate can be done to make the accounting profession more welcoming?
What the alumni told us is they just want their team members to be more genuine to them, to make, if you see somebody who feels, might be getting overlooked, or, make sure people feel like they belong, ask them, make sure they feel like it's okay to be themselves, all of your employees.
Right.
And then the alumni said, people, many of them, I know you said some of the quotes were really hard to hear, but some of the ones that you'll read in the report is, people felt like there were acts of exclusion, not inclusion. Like, right, they were purposely being left out of things. And, if you just imagine yourself in that same situation, if you don't feel included somewhere, what would you want people to do differently? And that's kind of how they reacted. It's like, I just want people to know that, I can bring something to this table if you ask me or if you include me. And I know this is not something that can wait. I think people are doing a lot of great initiatives around, safe spaces and employee resources groups, and offering, all staff training on unconscious bias and things like that. And so there's great initiatives already in place. But if the employee who you're trying to make feel included doesn't feel like those efforts are personally, intentionally helping them, that's not going to just like check the box and say, okay, we've got an inclusive environment now because we have these things. So you really have to be intentional about, changing the way we're treating our employees who are feeling this way, and not just discounting their feelings. And so I assure you that these students who are interning or these young professionals will not stay in the profession or in your organization if they aren't feeling like they're a part of the team. And so they just want to feel that. They want, they do everything opposite of what they said in the report.
Right.
If you read a quote that bothers you, make sure you're not, making others feel that way.
One of the things we had a discussion with our board of directors about this, and share the report. We asked our board to take this report back and share it and have a conversation. Read the quotes, and take them seriously, and think and self-reflect. We all have, listen, there's no unconscious bias training that occurs, and those are all the right things. But keeping it top of mind and looking at it personally and saying, what am I doing? Do I feel like this is are we really being inclusive? So I hope the report, no different, by the way, than our pipeline study, becomes a conversation starter.
Right. Well, you said in your opening letter of the report, you thought the research was a wake-up call for the society, and you thought the organization was somewhat naive. So what did you learn in the report that made you feel that way?
Again, so that's when you got to the themes. Was I surprised when I saw that the environment's not inclusive? No. Was I surprised when I saw that the environment's not inclusive? No. I think the wake-up call for me, the aha moment, really focused on two key areas. Again, even the background, thinking about a background that's very different than I'm in versus what others have been in, is again it wasn't a wake-up call. The wake-up call for me was, what can we do different? So for instance, we heard the adequately prepared. What can the Illinois CPA Society and other state societies, as well as employers, do? One of the things that we can do different and change. And when I look at somebody who didn't feel adequately prepared, that was a bit of a wake-up call, in the sense that it made us really think about why. And this is not a negative or a fault of any university or training development program. But I will use an example that we have within our Mary T. Scholars, the University of Illinois, a great accounting school, one of the top-ranked accounting schools, highly recognized accounting school in the country, and by the way, heavily recruited by accounting firms. All the top firms recruit individuals out of the University of Illinois. University of Illinois is a very rigorous program. They accept even to get in the program, you have to be the best and the brightest to get into their program. Well, they recruit students out of our Mary T program. And what they do is they bring them in, they accept them into their Masters of Accounting Science program. What a great opportunity. What University of Illinois does is they know that that's going to be a very competitive environment and a very rigorous study program. So they look at those individuals and they say, we're gonna work with you to make sure you're ready, academically ready, to compete with the other students in this program. Well, the aha moment was, why aren't we doing that with everybody? We always should be doing training, but why aren't we looking at, if we're going to recruit at non-traditional resources, then let's think about how we can develop individualized programs to help ensure their success versus the traditional upper out policies, the upper out practices at a lot of times. So that really was an aha moment for us, is we need to be more focused on, if we're going to go to, I'm not saying don't go to non-traditional sources, because that's where a lot of diverse individuals will get an opportunity. But if you're going to go to a non-traditional source, then you got to think about the world a little bit differently. That was a big aha moment for us, and actually something we want to really focus on over the next period of time. I say anymore, Carol will start to get palpitations because she knows that that's a big job. But the other side then was also the awareness of the feedback. I think was really kind of caught us off a little bit off guard. Again, resolvable if organizations try to understand it, accept it, realize it, and then move something up. Those are sort of the wow. These things we can do something about this.
Right. Carrie, just following up on what Todd said about graduates not feeling adequately prepared. We work for two of the larger state CPA societies in the country. We work with a lot of accounting firms. What can we do? What can firms do? What can companies do to help these students and graduates feel better prepared?
Yeah, I'll just add to what Todd was saying there. Part of who our Mary T scholars are, a majority of them did not have access to internships when they applied for our program, and they mainly because the accounting employers had been heavily recruiting at the top accounting programs, and a lot of our scholars didn't have access to the career fairs and the resources. And when Todd said he was, kind of caught off guard by that, is we didn't realize that the academic preparation that they were getting was making them feel some kind of way when they got into the workplace, that most of the people the employers were recruiting or that they saw in their intern classes were from the same one or two schools, and then they were an outsider to begin with. And I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I would say most graduates, most new hires, most of us don't feel adequately prepared when we first start a job, right? So the way we feel about starting a new job is really challenging. But a lot of what we heard from our scholars was, they didn't have anyone else in their family who had a professional job. They also had language barriers. They also had, they came from a different school and they couldn't talk the talk in certain conversations. And so imagine feeling how much it weighed on you when you already feel behind if you had all these other barriers as well. And so what they wanted is just, to acknowledge and say like, hey, we recruited you in a different way than we normally do. Do you have the same, kind of like an assessment of their skills? Like if I have a gap somewhere, if I need to retake a class, I just want you to tell me so that I don't fall even farther behind. And so I think what we can do is help, talk about that, not everybody starts on the same page. And if we can just address that and say, everybody has unique challenges and you happen to have you're a little bit behind here, giving some customized training based on individual needs instead of just, blanket training to everyone, and really filling in that gap in terms of their education or what their background experience might not have filled. And so I think as state societies, as the ICPA, other membership organizations, we can just help people feel more prepared in that professional environment. So what we're trying to do in Illinois is start connecting some of our alumni to mentorship or people outside of their workplace where they can feel safe and share some of these gaps so that we can help them address them. and better assist them with, what we're finding in the big areas of academic preparation where there's gap is really in the technical business areas, navigating that corporate environment, and then a CPA exam prep. So what they're finding is that they're a little bit more behind in preparing for the CPA exam. So I think us as membership organizations can really help them if the CPA exam content or the review courses is an equalizer for that new hire. Maybe we can focus more on helping them get that content under their belt before they get started.
And I think, go ahead, Todd, I'm sorry.
Just from an inclusion standpoint too, it's not even, the school you went to isn't just whether you're academically, it's also an inclusion standpoint. My son worked at a large accounting firm, and he was joking with us because my wife and I, because Michigan was playing Notre Dame. It's a big rivalry, Michigan Notre Dame, right? And he said all people were talking about in the office was Michigan Notre Dame because there were a lot of Michigan and Notre Dame alums in these firms, right? So it was funny. He felt a little excluded because he didn't go. He went to the University of Illinois, right? Now imagine somebody who, so we all wear with pride our colleges. We really do. We're very proud. I went to the university. We're very proud of that, right? But even that can even get into the inclusion part,
Right. And actually, I wanted to follow up on that idea of school choice. We've had events with from administrators, partners from different firms, and they will indicate that they recruit at these New Jersey schools, maybe Pennsylvania, New York, but they don't specifically say they don't recruit at some maybe other smaller schools, but they don't mention them. So the implication is that if you go to these schools, we're going to recruit you. If you don't go to these high level schools, then we are probably not going to recruit you. So sometimes it feels like some schools kind of get left behind. But when we get asked by a partner, what should I do in order to try and make my staff more diverse? We said, well, have you been to this school? Have you been to that school? I mean, do accounting firms and companies need to stretch beyond their traditional college relationships to find some of these new candidates?
I'm going to tell you, one of the huge benefit of our Mary T. Washington Wiley program, and what the firms love about it is most of them come from the non-traditional accounting, for lack of a better term, factories. They come from, we have some kids who come from University of Illinois, maybe DePaul or Northern, but the majority of our students really come from a non-traditional school. So I will tell you, absolutely, we should expand where we recruit. We should expand our thinking about where we recruit. Now, what I'm going to say is then you got to get to the second piece of it, which is, yes, do it, but then understand what you're doing and provide the necessary support and development to make sure those individuals to level the playing. And again, that's what the University of Illinois does when they recruit our Mary T. scholars into their master's program. They try to level the playing field so that the individual's ready to compete. So I absolutely believe we should expand where we're going to schools because there are students there, but don't then bring everybody in and treat them all the same. Because right. And don't, by the way, just say, oh, here's all these on-demand resources. So if you feel you're behind, take an on-demand resource. There's nothing wrong with personal development if you're going to go to non-traditional sources.
Carrie, there are a lot of well-meaning people in the profession that want to do the right thing, but they're not really sure where to get started. The report provided 6 steps that could help attract, retain, and advance more diverse talent in the accounting profession. Can you highlight some of those?
I think there's a huge opportunity to stop being so quick to replace new hires and invest in their development. And when I say invest in your development, again, very customized to an individual's need. So customized training or project opportunities, like Todd said, that are based on the individual's needs to make them successful. So we know there's, a talent pipeline issue, a diversity issue, and you get these, you may recruit in non-traditional ways for some diverse students you hire. And I think, like Todd was saying, is you have to onboard in non-traditional ways then as well. Not just expect, the student with, a more challenging background than the top accounting program in the country to sit at the same table and have the exact same knowledge on the first day. And I would say, just don't expect people to stay very long if they're not getting the help and feeling part of the team. And so we have to, these are real experiences. These are real stories. These are, you have to listen to it and believe it and not just, ignore it and say, oh, well, that doesn't happen here, because I can assure you it does happen at your workplace. And don't wait for the employee to figure it out on their own. They're not psychic. They don't know what they don't know, and they need that guidance, and that's what we're there for. And so really ensuring, we all have busy schedules, and nobody has enough time in the day. But if you really value your employees, you have to find out what's making individuals uncomfortable or unwelcome, and you have to change if you want them to be successful, if you want your team to be successful. So I think the first action I would say is to please just read the report and believe it, because it's true. And don't compare experiences, just look at what you have in front of you and work to make the improvements with the people you have.
And I felt like a lot of the themes were kind of interconnected. The idea of an environment not being inclusive, but also not getting feedback. As I was reading the report, what struck me was that a lot of the folks that you interviewed, they don't know what they don't know. And even something, I think one of the quotes, I forget whether it was male or female, commented about not even knowing what to wear to work, and commenting that once they saw what other people wore to work, they didn't even have that in their wardrobe. So I think you can't take anything for granted, but you have to ask questions, you have to provide feedback, and you have to help them adjust to this new environment.
Yeah, they surely have the potential if they just, are given the tools.
Right, exactly. So Todd, I'll give you the last word on this. You mentioned in your message at the beginning of the report that despite good faith efforts, the profession hasn't managed to move the needle. Our CEO, Ralph Thomas, says that all the time. And, we've heard from a diverse member fairly recently. He said he's been hearing about diversity for 25 years. And he basically said, I'm done talking about this. Let me know when something actually happens. So how do you keep CPAs and other well-meaning professionals from getting discouraged by the lack of progress?
Talking about it. But you got to keep more. We need action. We really need action. So, for instance, Carrie and I talked about our Married T program, and we've addressed what can we address. One is doing a report like this. So there has been some progress made, not enough, not fast enough. This is a marathon, but you got to keep talking about it. You got to talk about it in different ways. But you need to then start identifying some of the key areas and really focus on what can we change. It's not going to happen by inertia, just by saying we want to more. I have no doubt that the leaders of the large firms absolutely want to increase diversity and diversity within the firms. I have no doubt about it. I believe they want it. They're serious about it. We've got to start thinking about the world differently. We just can't say we want a more inclusive environment, and we're going to do unconscious bias training, and that's going to make the world better. I think we need to measure, but when we're not measuring, we've got to get to the core issues. And I think what we hope this report did was really get to some of those core issues. So if you want to keep people engaged, keep talking about it, but start identifying the core issues and taking actions. What are we going to do? What's the Illinois CPA Society going to do? We're having a conversation in January. We're having a conversation about a program that we want to start to launch that's going to focus on how do we go to the next level, and how can we help individuals become successful by providing them, as Carrie said earlier, the mentorships and sometimes the skills that they may not be getting in the firm they're in. We all have a responsibility to do that. If we're going to, we have a responsibility not just to get somebody placed, but how do we help them ensure success? So you keep talking about it, whether people want to listen about it or not. When I go and talk to member groups, I do my town hall forums this year. Every single town hall forum, whether I'm in Central Illinois, Northern Illinois, whether I'm in the state of Illinois, I talk about this issue. I talk about this issue whether or not I'm in an area that is diverse or isn't diverse. You got to keep talking about it. You've got it. It requires the intestinal fortitude, so we're going to keep going. But you've got to then develop some programs that are going to address it because they won't solve themselves.
All right. Well, this has been an enlightening conversation for me, and hopefully your study will be a wake up call to many people listening. Thank you so much, Todd and Carrie, for taking the time to be with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you all for listening and watching. To access the CPA Diversity Report, visit icpas.org/CPA Diversity.